When we create a macro, we want to make it easy for our user to run it. Now obviously we don't want the user to have to open up Visual Basic and run it from here. So in this section of the course, we look at the various ways that the user can easily run our macros. So now we're going to create a new workbook, and in this workbook we're just going to create a macro. And again, we just select Insert and Module to create our module, and we'll place our new macro in this module. Now the macro here will simply display a message in a message box. So we'll run this first of all, as this is good practice to ensure that our macro runs correctly. And we can see it displays text testing to the user. So now in this lesson, the way the user can use our macro is by using a shortcut key. And so to add a shortcut key, we simply select Macros, we select the macro that we want to use, and then we click on Options. Now when the dialog appears, you can see Ctrl+, and this means whatever key we enter here, so for example we're entering X, Ctrl and X will be the shortcut. So click OK, and we can just click Cancel here, and our key has been assigned. So now when we press Ctrl X, our macro will run. And there you see testing is displayed in the dialog. So in this lesson we looked at adding a shortcut key to our macro, and in the next couple of lessons we'll look at different ways we can run macros. So a second way to run your macro is to place the icon on the Quick Access toolbar, and this is the toolbar at the very top of the screen. Now if we want to customize this, we can select File, Options, and then we select Quick Access toolbar on the left hand side. And you can see here we can customize. Now there's an easier way to get to this dialog, and it's by simply right clicking on the Quick Access toolbar and selecting Customize Quick Access toolbar. And again you can see we got to the dialog much quicker. Now if we want to add a macro, we first go to Choose Commands From and we select Macros. So when we click on Macros, you see that our macro appears here. Now to add, we simply highlight the macro and then click on Add. And our macro appears in the Customize Quick Access toolbar dialog. Now if we want to modify it, we can change the icon and we can change the text that appears. So we'll just pick a distinctive icon, and we'll also change the text. And this is the text you'll see when you hover the mouse over the icon. So we click OK, so our macro is in place. So let's click OK here, and you can see now that the macro has appeared in the Quick Access ribbon. Now if we hover over it, you can see our text here, Run Test Macro. So let's click on this and see if our macro runs. And of course it does, and you can see the result here at the center of the screen. So to remove the macro, we simply right click on the toolbar and select Remove. So you can see it's quite easy to add and remove links to macros as you need them. Now if you want the user to use your macros, obviously you want a more permanent solution, and we'll see in the next lesson how we can do this. A great way of running macros is using buttons. And this is particularly useful if you give your macros to other users. They can simply click on the button to run the macro, and you can place text in the button to make it obvious which macro the button runs. So to add a button, we simply click on Insert in the Controls section of the Developer tab, and the top left control that we select here is the button. Now when we click on the button, our cursor changes to a plus, and we just hold down the left mouse button to draw the shape of the button. And when we're finished, the Assign Macro appears, so we can assign the macro to the button at this point. Now we can also skip, but let's go ahead and assign it to Test Message. So when we click OK, our button appears and it's now assigned. So we click on the button and it will run our macro. So that's how simple it is to assign a macro to a button. Now if we want to assign it to a different macro, we right click, select Assign Macro, and the Assign Macro dialog appears, and we just select a second macro or whichever macro we want to assign it to. And again, we'll run it again, and this time the message is testing 2 because that's what the macro test message 2 performs. Now to change the text, we can simply right click and select Edit Text, and then we can add any text we like. Now it's also a good idea to put a description of what the button does to the right of the button. I normally do this by placing text in a cell adjacent to the button. Now we can also format the button by right clicking and selecting Format Control. So you can see there's many different ways of formatting the control. So we can change the font, the alignment, the size. Now one thing to be aware, when you create a button, it automatically moves in size with cells, but you can change this setting here. Now if we want to delete a button, there's no delete option, but we can easily get around this by just using the cut selection. So we right click on the button and select cut as if we were going to paste. And this removes the button. So let's just undo this and you can see the button again. So in this lesson, what we looked at was using buttons to run macros, and you can see it's a very efficient way of doing it. If we give a workbook to another user, it'll be very obvious from the text on the button or even some extra descriptive text what the button does.